everyone, it's Colin from DIY Guy. Thanks for checking out today's video, which is a follow-on to a video I posted back in the fall about why you should plant a cover crop over the winter. Just a little background in case you haven't watched that video. I did plant an alfalfa cover crop last fall, and then I covered the rest of my garden with leaves. I just wanted to do an evaluation, kind of experiment and just see if it worked before I did it for my whole garden. The reason I planted alfalfa is because it's a nitrogen scavenging cover crop, which means that it just, as it grows, it pulls nitrogen out of your soil and just stores it in its roots and leaves, and then come springtime you cut it down at soil level, which basically kills the plant, and then you leave all that debris in your soil. It decomposes and returns the nitrogen back into your dirt. What it does over the winter is just holds that nitrogen for you, that way the rain and snow melt doesn't wash it out of your garden. So that's the biggest benefit. So in today's video, this is essentially the culmination of the cover crop experiment, and what we're going to do, we're going to put on our geology hats and we're going to take 2 core samples. We're going to call it a core sample because that's what geologists call it. We're going to take one sample, about a 6-inch diameter plug, about 6 to 8 inches deep. We're going to take one sample out of the alfalfa patch, and we're going to take one sample out of the leaf covered patch. So unfortunately, there's no way for me to actually measure nitrogen and nutrient content in the dirt, but there are 3 things that we can look at that will really give us a good idea of how well our cover crop worked. The first thing we'll look at is soil layering. We're going to dig up these plugs and we'll kind of just examine the thickness of that topsoil layer. And it's super easy because in my garden, after the topsoil layer, it goes to like brown orange clay and rocks. The second thing we'll look at is soil compaction, or how packed down your soil is. Now think about if you plant a seed, which soil sample is that seed going to thrive in? If your soil is too packed down, it's really not going to be able to put down good strong roots into that dirt. And the final thing we're going to look at is a worm count. So this is really simple. We're just going to break apart each sample, roughly the same size, and we're just going to count the number of worms in it. To me, this is the most valuable experiment because it's the closest we can get to analyzing the nutrient content of our soil, mineral content, and just general soil health. Obviously, the more worms you have, the better that soil ecosystem is going to be, which means your plants are just going to grow better. So there's the 3 things we're going to look at: soil layering, compaction, and a worm count. So now I'm going to dig some samples and we'll get into the experiment. Okay, like I said before, we're going to start by looking at the general layering of the soil. So we'll start with the alfalfa core. And this one looks like it probably starts changing color, you know, maybe 2 inches down. Now compare that with the second sample, and it looks like, you know, this is definitely heavier. It feels denser, like a chunk of clay, more so than this one. Topsoil probably goes down, we'll call it 1.5 inches just to be generous. So I'll say the alfalfa cover crop has a better topsoil layer by about 1/2 inch. We've also got a little guy that wanted to get in on the action. Now the second test I wanted to run was the compaction test. And the way we're going to do this is just by, you know, kind of analyzing how crumbly the dirt is, how well it breaks apart. So right away you can see how deep the alfalfa roots penetrate. You can see that they go down, you know, almost the whole thickness of the core, maybe 6 inches for some of them. So this breaks apart really nicely. It does get, you know, after that topsoil layer is gone, you know, about 2 inches down, it starts to be kind of chunky and clay. But that topsoil layer is really nice and crumbly. It doesn't seem to pack together a lot, except for the fact that it's been raining and it's a little bit muddy. Now on to the leaf covered sample. So this one, we'll break it apart. That does not look very good. And again, you can see that the topsoil layer, you know, maybe 1.5 inches was generous, might be closer to 1 inch. So I'd say the cover crop is definitely looser and breaks off less in chunks like this. You know, I break this in half and you can see a line where it breaks. Whereas over here, when it breaks, it kind of crumbles on the seam. So you can't really see a good line where that dirt broke. And that's a good thing. We want it to be that way because that means that the roots are all spread out. They've kind of aerated the soil for us. That alfalfa root is going and aerating 6 inches deep into our soil. Whereas this, like I said, kind of just feels like I'm breaking apart a chunk of clay. So for test 2, the compaction test, I'd definitely say the alfalfa cover crop takes the cake. Just look at the mound difference. This looks like a bunch of broken clay, just, you know, chunks, while this looks like actual dirt that you could plant something in. Now on to the third and final test, which is my favorite. We are going to do a worm count. Now I'll just fast forward through this and kind of give you the count at the end, but I'll stay on camera just so you know I'm not cheating. Looks like we got to cut one. I'm not going to count that one twice. All right, it looks like the final count on the leaf covered sample is about 7 1/4 because one of them got chopped. Okay, the final count for the alfalfa crop was 17. So we had 7 1/4, we'll call it 7 in the leaf covered plug, and we had 17 in the alfalfa cover crop plug. So that's huge. That's like 150% more in the cover crop than in the leaf covered dirt. Also, PSA for worms everywhere. If you see them struggling on the sidewalk, which I do all the time after a rain, throw them in the garden. Save a worm, save a garden. All right, let's wrap up this video with conclusions from our 3 tests. The first one was the soil layering. We saw that the alfalfa cover crop had a topsoil layer, probably a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch thicker. I wouldn't plant a cover crop based strictly on the topsoil layer difference that we saw today. The second thing was the compaction level. Now this was a good reason to plant a cover crop. If we look at the difference between these soils, your garden is going to do a lot better in soil like this than it is going to do in soil like the leaf covered crop. Definitely a big difference in compaction. That brings us to the third and final one, which was the worm test. And you know, I gotta say that the alfalfa cover crop just blew the other one away. It had 17 worms versus 7 in the leaf covered crop. So in my opinion, I would plant the alfalfa cover crop again next year because of the big difference between soil compaction and the worm count. I just thought that was huge. Well, there you go. That's all we've got for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hit that like and subscribe button. I'll catch you in the next one. Keep growing it yourself.